Hello, thanks for watching. This is a follow-up to my original video that was called Sherlock, How He Faked His Death. I've had an overwhelming response to that original video with over 60,000 views as I record this.
Which is just fantastic, and there's been so many great comments and discussions going on underneath that video about other theories and other ideas, so I decided I had to do another video to address those. So I'm going to have a look now. I feel the other ideas and clues that perhaps I missed the first time round.
Okay, here's the first thing that popped up in the comments quite often was regarding the body at the end and the debate whether or not it was Sherlock on the ground or it was actually in fact a fake body or something along those lines. Somebody mentioned about a mannequin earlier on in the episode, and this is the part I'm looking at now. Once you put the subtitles up and have a look and see what they're talking about, it's actually clear that it's related to another case that Sherlock's investigating. And in fact, the mannequin that we see earlier on in the episode actually disappears later on. And although it's hanging there at the start, in a later part of the episode it's gone completely. So this goes missing a long time before Sherlock actually asked Molly for any help, so to relate it to that seems very unlikely. Another theory that popped up in the comments was regarding the use of the word repel in a conversation between Sherlock and the journalist. This actually happened 2 points during the episode, but to relate it to any issue regarding Sherlock rappelling down the side of the building seems a little bit far-fetched for me. I think it's just the use of the word, and it to stretch that out to relate it to someone rappelling, I don't think so, and there's no evidence of any rappelling going on, so that's that. The next thing I wanted to look at was just a conversation between Moriarty and Sherlock at the flat. Moriarty starts talking about how he owes Sherlock something, and he owes him a fool. I think this is just a bit of foreshadowing, really, and setting things up. And the whole IOU thing, I think a lot of people have noticed and wondering what its relationship to everything is. The first one is with the apple that Moriarty leaves at the flat. And there's a couple of other occasions throughout that you see the IOU is on the windows of the building opposite the hospital after the little girl screams at Sherlock. And also later on as he escapes with Watson, it's graffitied onto the wall. I'd love to hear what everyone else thinks about this. For myself, I just think the IOUs are a part of Moriarty's game, a way to show Sherlock that he's in control and that Sherlock's following his path. The key points that we actually see each of these IOUs, I think, reflects that and reflects the path that Sherlock is on. Having just mentioned the screaming girl, I thought it was best to talk about that now. A lot of people seem to think that this ties in quite well with what happens later on in the episode, and this actually ties in with how we explain the Sherlock on the ground regarding whether it's a fake body or is it a mask that's been constructed, because a lot of people are saying that Moriarty was the one who wore a Sherlock mask earlier on in the episode. That's why the girl screamed when she sees Sherlock. I kind of see it a slightly different way, and this is what I think. Lestrade makes the point after the girl has screamed that there's something about Sherlock that reminds her of the kidnapper, which we know to be Moriarty. Earlier on in the episode, Moriarty making the point in the conversation with Sherlock that they are just alike, him and Sherlock. And again later on the rooftop, he says to Sherlock, "You're me." And I think there's that fine line between good and evil, and these two characters both split at that point. They are very similar people deep down, and it's probably that attitude and that persona that the girl sees. Rather than the girl having literally just seen Sherlock's face in a mask form of some kind, I think it's more a case that she sees that personality, that persona in his eyes that she saw in Moriarty's, and that's what scares her. The role Molly's played has been discussed in the comments, and I think a general consensus comes in line with what I was originally saying regarding her helping Sherlock in some way, and I think the conversation we see between Sherlock and her and him needing her help and her being willing to do so, it's just basically a confirmation of that idea and the fact that she does help him in some way and has some role to play. One of the biggest contention things that have popped up in the comments is regarding the rubber ball that we see Sherlock bouncing here in the mortuary. A lot of people seem to think it was used as a way to put under his arm and to slow his pulse. I've actually looked into this, and in a book called The Secrets of Whodunit by J.C. Cannell, there is a particular article in here which details how previous magicians have used that particular trick. They place the ball underneath their armpits, as a lot of people have said, and the flow of the blood to the wrist is interrupted, and that alters the pulse, and that can have that impact. So I think it's probably quite likely that is a possibility. And I now briefly wanted to talk about the rooftop towards the very end of the episode. And there's a couple of things that people pointed out in the comments. The first was here on the three benches here, the one furthest to the right. There is somebody there standing with some kind of bag or something. People seem to think this could be a fake body of some kind. Also, I talked about the chalked marked out area, and people kindly pointed out that that is actually there. And looking on Google Street View, that confirms this. Just to round up a few things towards the end about it being on the roof and wondering whether it was Moriarty. Did he actually die? Was it who? Somebody actually said they thought it was Moriarty's body that was thrown off with a mask on it. I don't think this is possible, and it's pretty clear here that Moriarty does shoot himself, unless it's some very elaborate trick, which, of course, in the realms of the writing of the TV show and the dramatisation, that's very possible, and that could be revealed. You never know. But I tend to think he's definitely dead. Regarding this, a slight marking here next to his foot, I do wonder about that. Just let me know what you think regarding that. Do you think it means anything? I tend to think this is just Sherlock acting at this point. You know, and he says it's a trick, it's just a magic trick in the actual dialogue. I think, you know, maybe that's a hidden clue that he's hoping Watson will figure out later. We don't know. But if there's any other questions or queries you've got, then, you know, post them in the comments for this video or the previous video. It's been a brilliant response to the original video, and I hope people enjoy this one just as much and keeps the discussion going about everything. Just to finish off, in the way that he lands, I think it's clear here he's pointing forward directly, and then the body lands in a different position, so it does raise a few queries of that regard.
Unless this is a continuity error, I tend to think this tells us something about what happened when he jumped off the roof. I do believe he jumped into something in the back of the truck. Whether or not it's a fake body, like a mannequin or a dead body that Molly's used, I'm still undecided. I'd love to hear what everybody else thinks. Thanks for watching.